We have more people killed along here than anywhere else in Australia.
The Flinders Highway, 11 people murdered or missing. This is Australia's biggest cluster of unsolved murders.
If you want to make someone disappear, this is the place to do it.
Serial killers, they are the ones that you might come across if you're on the side of the road.
My brother Tony vanished in 1982. When a person goes missing, no family is ready for that.
A grieving brother searches for answers on a lonely highway.
It took 30 years before we heard the word suspect.
11 murdered or missing, and every case is still a mystery. This time, our experts reinvestigate how one young man could vanish without a trace. Every clue, every dead end, and every lead is back in play.
He's a guy who's working in the meatworks.
The press even started calling him their own Hannibal Lecter.
The new investigations took us to the town of Hughenden.
Some communities will protect their town and their people above everything else.
The witnesses that came forward changed everything. That's the obvious spot that dropped the body in.
The trench that has the depth of about 1 metre is the key to look at.
On the Flinders Highway, those serial killers and those people who have a tendency for violence, they are the ones that you might come across if you're on the side of the road.
We're investigating a cold case from 4 decades ago. A teenager who disappeared somewhere along this 900-kilometre stretch of desolate highway.
And we know that in the 1980s, it was an incredibly dangerous time because this was an era of the backpacker. Now we see people increase their level of risk by getting out on the highways and the byways. In May 1982, Tony Jones, just 19 years old, headed off on a working holiday around Australia. His plan was to meet up with one of his older brothers, Tim. But Tony Jones never made it to his destination. And we're bringing some of the sharpest criminal minds in the country together to investigate why.
We had a big family. There were 5 boys, 2 girls, and another that was fostered later on. Tony, to his mates, they had different nicknames from him because he was a character and that sort of fella that attracted nicknames. He was a fella that could head off for a weekend and come back and he would somehow have years' worth of stories. He was always able to entertain us with the most colourful stories. He was dearly loved by his mates. He surrounded himself with people that loved life, loved to laugh, loved to be here. He was larger than life and greatly loved.
Tony and his other brother Tim set out on their road trips separately, one on his bicycle, the other on foot.
And then they hatched this plan of travelling back to Perth, but the long way round, across the top. Tony would hitchhike and Tim would ride his bike and they would meet up along the way.
They agreed to meet in Mount Isa, 900 kilometres west of Townsville from where they set out. Tony would have to hitchhike the entire way along what we now know as Australia's most dangerous stretch of road. Even in the 1980s, the Flinders Highway was littered with unexplained murders and disappearances.
When we last spoke to Tony, he called us from Townsville. It was 10 to 9 at night on the 3rd. We said, oh, look, we'll put $150 into your account, so when you get there, give Tim what he needs and take the rest. So Tim was desperate for him to get there. Tony himself was down to his last few dollars. He said, don't worry, Mum, I'll be there tomorrow or the next day. There was a sighting soon after the phone call, in a logical spot to be picked up. And there's no other sightings of him in Townsville since then.
Of the 11 murders along the Outback Murder Highway, this case, it's particularly intriguing. A cryptic anonymous letter, a serial killer suspect, a small town where nobody's talking, and all this fed into the shocking twists and turns in Tony Jones's story, and it's full of dark secrets. I'm Amelia Roberhart. I'm an investigative journalist from Queensland. I've tracked down old court documents and police reports, scoured through newspaper reports and traced witnesses. I know that highway. It's isolated cattle country. It's littered with meatworks and abattoirs, remote mining towns, transient populations, missing people and buried bodies. I've never come across anyone as determined or as dedicated as Tony's brother Mark when it comes to trying to uncover the truth.
It's been my entire adult life working out how much I should get on with my life and how much I need to dedicate to finding out what happened to Tony.
That last phone call on November 3rd is key to this case. Tony's mother transferred $150 into his bank account to share with his brother when they met up. But something happened in the hours immediately after that call.
We do feel quite certain that between that phone call and bank opening on the next morning, that's when something tragic happened to Tony. His brother Tim called on the weekend. What's happening? Haven't heard from Tony, haven't seen him. Okay, no worries, hang in there, it's a long trip. So we're more than a week without hearing from him.
On November 11th, 8 days after that last phone call, Tony's family contacted the bank to see if the money deposited by his mother had been touched. The bank came back with news they didn't want to hear.
The bank balance showing no sign of the $150 being touched.
The Jones family knew Tony was flat broke and desperately needed the cash. So an untouched bank account scared them.
He should have been outside the bank at opening time the next morning, but that never happened. That changed everything. I think most of us knew that we weren't going to find Tony alive.
Knowing that Tony, who had no cash, had not touched the money in his bank account, the Jones family contacted the police.
So, you know, for a couple of days we left it in the hands of the police. They certainly weren't showing a lot of interest. Virtually nothing was happening. So my mother and my brother Brian and myself jumped on a plane and we headed to Townsville Police Station. The sergeant would have ideas and would say, yeah, but that doesn't explain the money, it doesn't explain why he hasn't picked up a phone and called.
I'm Dr. Louise Stedding. I'm an archaeologist and a criminologist. The family would have been an amazing source of behavioural information. For whatever reason, the police felt it was undesirable to use the family as their primary source. I think it's a really wasted resource. Nobody knows the victim better than the family.
Police had nothing to go on until the following year, when unexpectedly they received a huge tip-off. Townsville Police received an anonymous letter, handwritten, that claimed to know where Tony's body was buried.
We heard from the police that they'd received a letter that said that the body of A.J. Jones was buried in or near the Fullerton River, 100 yards south of the Flinders Highway. The author of that letter used Tony's second initial, referring to Tony as A.J. Jones, but he was just known as Tony.
When I first saw the letter, the journalist in me was fascinated. The anonymous letter, it had so many details about Tony, bang on.
At the time, it was enough to make us think, where did they get this information? Is there something to it?
It wasn't much, but at that stage, it was all the police had. Police combed the area identified in the mystery letter.
So the police did a search. They searched the Fullerton riverbed with dogs, metal detectors, but they came up empty-handed.
The mystery of that note has stayed with Mark for 42 years. For our investigation, Dr. Stedding is going to the place that, according to the 1983 letter, is where Tony lies.
We're at the Fullerton River in Queensland. This letter that was sent to police, it was a little bit cryptic. Cryptic can be a deflection. So it could be true, could be false. It said he was buried, so I'm looking for physical evidence.
If Tony's remains are here, a cadaver dog can still pick up the scent.
They have an amazing capability nose-wise. Rufus is trained on minute things to as small as your little finger. A lot of that is aged for more than 50 years. We look at the environment like the riverbank we're sitting in at the moment. It's not just about bringing the dogs out. It's absolutely critical that we do our research beforehand.
If a body was buried at this site in 1982, it would have to be above the highest watermark, or the river would have revealed the truth by now. And so Dr. Stedding focuses her investigation on the higher ground around the Fullerton River site.
I looked at topography and noticed that the only high point here was at 1 metre. 1 metre of a slightly raised area on that side of the river. I feel it's not enough.
The ground isn't high enough above the river to hide a body for 40 plus years. And Louise has found another problem with the location described in the mystery note.
We came here to look at 100 metres from the road. However, we found a fence right across the river, 30 metres from the road. And it probably was back then because that's for cattle. And the road hasn't been realigned. So if Tony was buried in this area, then he would be buried 30 metres from the road, because no one is going to climb through this kind of barbed wire fence and transporting a body. I mean, this is the flattest, most desolate place.
The anonymous note was handed into police in 1983, months after Tony's disappearance. But the fence and the flat ground go against the claim that the body is buried 100 metres from the highway. The cadaver dog has no area to focus on, so they've hit a dead end.
99% of what we do is finding nothing. But that's clearing areas. That's very important work.
So there's your explanation there. This letter must be a hoax.
The police search in 1983 also turned up nothing. Their one paper-thin lead blown away. The weeks since Tony's disappearance rolled into months and then years. The case stood still.
And I guess we all felt that, maybe there is nothing. Maybe there is no real clues that follow up. Maybe that was it. The years started to tick by.
In 2002, a coronial inquest laid bare the police's failure to investigate Tony's disappearance. With no body, no sign of life and no leads.
The coroner's report found that not only was Tony dead, but he had died at the hands of a person or persons unknown. So 20 years has gone by, and the first word that Tony Jones's family gets is that he was definitely murdered. So the big question remains, who killed him?
The coroner criticised police and told them to step up their investigation. Then, in 2014, a breakthrough. From nowhere, police suddenly had a suspect and a confession.
In 2014, a new suspect surfaces in this investigation.
It's not often that someone puts themselves in the frame for murder, but that's exactly what happened here. In 2014, Queensland Police travelled to a Darwin prison to talk to a violent, convicted murderer. He said he wanted to confess to another killing in Queensland, in Mount Isa.
A man named Andy Olbray. He is the perfect candidate for a criminal case like this.
In the Northern Territory, police say a jail inmate has confessed to as many as 14 murders. 28-year-old Andy Albury is currently serving life for killing a woman at a Darwin boarding house in November 1983.
Albury is not a fella you want to run into. The murder that he was jailed for was very violent.
He's a guy who's working in the meat works. He has the means of being able to dispose of bodies.
In the outback, we have a lot of cattle stations, and what sits off the cattle stations is the slaughterhouses, the abattoirs.
Everywhere I plot where a body has been found, there's a slaughterhouse nearby. And when I start plotting that on a map and I get one line along the Flinders Highway and it's the bodies and the abattoirs, I start to wonder.
It took 30 years before we heard the word suspect. He claimed to have killed Tony. This is a very dangerous man.
Andy Albury will never be released from prison. And he is on the record saying Jones should have stayed buried where I planted him and that he'd had fun killing Tony on the highway. Could Andy Albury be the man Mark's been looking for all these years?
There are certain people who are detached, who are desensitised to death and gore, the killing, the cutting, the bleeding.
Albury made no secret of the fact that he enjoyed killing and mutilating people, and the Northern Territory press started calling him their own Hannibal Lecter.
So for law enforcement, they now are looking at a suspect who has committed homicides in the past. This idea of past behavior is predictive of future behavior. So they have to consider this as a really powerful lead in this investigation.
Remember, Tony Jones was killed in 1982. So according to these reports, in 1982 and 83, Albury, who's a slaughterhouse worker, was travelling from Alice Springs but up through Queensland. And that included the highway between Mount Isa and Townsville. And he told police that at the same time, he killed between 9 and 14 hitchhikers.
Described by police as the most dangerous man behind bars in Australia, local CIB police are taking Albury's claims seriously and have alerted homicide investigators around Australia.
But the more police dug into Albury's claims about killing Tony Jones, the more his story just didn't stack up.
There'd been an inquiry into this man's claims that found that these were delusions. He was a dangerous man for sure, and he probably killed more than the one, but not the cases that he's talking about.
Andy Albury had made the whole story up to big note himself and try to gain leverage inside jail.
History has shown that serial predators will actually take one of two pathways. In some cases, they'll minimize everything they do. And then there are those who are all about legacy. They actually want to be known as the best serial killer that ever lived. And so we'll see these predators actually aggrandizing what they've done. They might even take the deaths of other individuals and attribute those to them in order to increase their numbers. And so when it comes to confessions, it's something that has to be vetted out because you can't simply take their word for it. Their challenge becomes, is it believable?
As desperate as Mark was to find his brother's killer, he had to accept that Andy Albury wasn't their man.
After that, it just felt like we were just never going to know. We were going to have to live with the not knowing.
I think Albury thought confessing to a Queensland murder could potentially end him up in a better jail. But that's disappointing for Mark and the rest of Tony's family. Because if it's not him, then who did it?
In 1982, hitchhiker Tony Jones vanished without a trace on the deadly Flinders Highway. In 2002, a coronial inquest found that Tony was killed by a person or persons unknown. The case went nowhere until 2015, when Tony's brother Mark got wind of a covert police investigation that zeroed in on a small town called Hughenden. For our investigation, Mark is going back to that town.
We had very little idea where the new investigations were going to lead. We were kept in the dark at that stage. It eventually unfolded as to what the police had been working on, and it took us to the town of Hughenden.
The Flinders Highway runs from Townsville to Mount Isa, and Hughenden is situated halfway between the length of it. When I first came here, it was a walled town. We had 12, 13 shearing teams, probably 10 to 15 people in each team. There was 4 or 5 pubs in the town. It was a wild town. When a fight did start out, normally half the bar was in it. But everybody knew everybody, and you knew who to not upset.
Police heard stories of a pub fight involving a backpacker about the time of Tony's disappearance.
A pub fight might sound like nothing unusual, but these stories pointed to the backpacker being killed.
You've got no idea of how many people disappeared along the full length of the highway. Tony Jones, he was a backpacker. I don't know, I've heard that many stories about what happened to him. But the rumour is he was in drinking, just quiet drink. There was a bit of a touch-up. Set to, whatever you want to call it. The story goes that he was disappeared after that. You wouldn't believe half of what you hear, but you could just imagine what would have happened.
There must have been other people in the pub that night, but none of them were talking. Like many small towns, Hughenden was a closed shop.
Even though Australia is known for its friendliness, openness, helping people out, there's always individuals who are looking for opportunity. I'm Colleen Gwynn. I'm a former Outback detective. Most of my work was centred on homicides in the Outback and also serious assaults. I'm most known for the investigation into the abduction of Joanne Lees and the murder of Peter Falconio in the Northern Territory. The Outback in Australia can have these sort of sinister overtones. Some communities are so small, so connected. They experience everything together. They know each other's business and they're a closed community. And it makes it extremely challenging when you're trying to ask questions because they will stick together. They will protect their town and their people above everything else. And you are an intruder. They look at you with suspicion and you are not welcome.
But a few were beginning to break the town's silence, and a shocking story was emerging of someone being killed in Hughenden in the 1980s.
Individuals reported that they had received personal confessions from someone that they knew from the community of committing homicide.
The witnesses that came forward changed everything, absolutely changed everything.
As investigators zeroed in, the town of Hughenden became a place of interest. And then, in 2016, Tony's brother Mark had the biggest breakthrough in the case. 2 witnesses came forward. Both claimed a slaughter yard worker admitted to his involvement in a murder.
And these are very credible women. And they have said that they have heard this particular slaughter yards worker describe what he did in the early 80s. He and a friend killed a hitchhiker that was pissing them off.
These women became the first people to publicly tell their story. Both women claimed they heard these accounts directly from one of the men involved.
He just said, you know, I'm not a really good person, I've done some bad things. They were partying at the pub. He said that his mate had had a fight with this fella. He told me that he'd helped kill somebody.
He told me he'd killed somebody, and he said it more than once, so I've killed somebody. He told someone else about it. He went on to explain that it was horrible, that they had disposed of his body in the burning pits at the slaughter yards. I gathered it was in Hughenden.
A third person heard a very similar story from the same man. Both the men named by witnesses deny any involvement in the death of Tony Jones. Mark knows the identity of both men in question, but for legal reasons, we won't air their names.
You always say somebody knows something. Well, 30 years on, we suddenly saw the witnesses coming forward.
And it didn't stop with the first three witnesses.
Two more people, one from the 90s and one from just 2 years ago, have also heard these accounts from the suspect. They've all heard the same story. He can't shut up. He told this story a dozen times.
The same story again and again, and Mark has heard them all. Then, an eyewitness came forward, this time from a night at the pub.
This witness describes who he believes was Tony, staggering out to the front of the Grand Hotel, holding his ribs, bleeding, out the front of the hotel where guests were drinking, including this witness. The person then disappeared down the street into the shadows, and that is the part that this witness saw himself and was told after that that two suspects got in their car and pursued this person down the road. I don't know the details of how he was killed, but we have multiple scenarios now that have common factors consistent with this account of him being disposed of at the slaughter yards.
He took it to the slaughter yards and put it through a bandsaw, was what the equipment that he said he used.
Mark says 5 different people have now come forward. They've heard that same person detail his involvement in a brutal murder. Every grisly detail.
You know, one of the things about these different accounts is the method of disposal is slightly different. But they all end up at the slaughter yards.
He said to me that he did cut up the body into little pieces. And at the slaughter yard, they used to have some sort of area where they used to put all the leftovers into some sort of pond or pit.
slaughter yards, they have these pits or trenches, if you like, that they use to get rid of carcass leftovers. It's a pretty obvious place you could dump a body.
There was no names. He just said, oh, it was some backpacker that nobody would miss.
In 2017, Mark Jones' investigation into what happened to his brother Tony back in the 1980s was heading for a breakthrough. A second coronial inquest into Tony's disappearance directed police to forensically examine the old Hughenden slaughter yards. These slaughter yards, now under new ownership, look nothing like today's commercial abattoirs. But that does not account for the monumental error made by the police.
The report was done, but on the wrong location. We wanted to search the burn pits at the slaughter yards. Well, the council tip up the road, they also had burn pits, so they did the report on that.
The council tip is up the road from the slaughter yards, but is a completely separate place and looks nothing like them.
And unfortunately, the coroner said, oh, I'm sorry, then I can't grant the warrant. Where you might have thought he would have said, you searched where? You were supposed to do it on the slaughter yards. Can you go back there and give me the report that I asked for? He chose not to do that.
The slaughter yards are private property, so they can't be searched without a warrant.
So those premises have never been searched.
Dr. Louise Stedding's been looking into Tony Jones's cold case for years. For this documentary, and with the permission of the new owners of the old slaughter yard, she's finally doing that forensic report the police didn't do.
Most people think archaeologists go out there with the shovel, the trowel, even the toothbrush, you know, but it's not like that. Before you go anywhere, you do research. You close in on an area. At Hughenden, we decided to use satellite imagery, but also aerial photography and ground penetrating radar.
Dr. Stedding's investigation into the old slaughter yard has potentially unearthed a significant finding that she's about to share with Mark.
Okay, Louise, great to see you. What's been happening?
Okay, I'm going to give you an update for the trenches that are present at that site and their depth. So further up towards the solar farm, we have a soakage trench. We have a shallow trench. And then we have another short trench. We did the ground penetrating radar, and that one goes down to about 1 metre. So I then pulled out the satellite images and aerial shots that go right back. We've got 1978 and we've got 1984.
Louise's methodical work finally hands Mark a new clue. A deep trench that was opened before Tony's disappearance and was covered over soon after. Surely it's worth a closer look. The answers may be just under that earth.
It's not for me to say who's responsible at all for Tony's death. But what I can tell you is, if this site is relevant to Tony, the trench that has the depth of about 1 metre is the key to look at.
Louise, you've uncovered an area that cries out to be searched. So it's up now to the coroner to determine he's got the power to grant a warrant.
And what I'll do is I'll write them a letter and make some suggestions.
Let's hope that the coroner will say yes.
I imagine they will.
And the Townsville police, whoever's involved, turn over every grain of sand they can to either find my brother or to prove that he's not there. We need some sort of certainty. We certainly haven't had it over the 40 years. Research, if he's not there, he's not there. If he's there, it is the end of this story. Thank you, Louise. I thank you for what you've done.
Dr. Stedding has potentially narrowed the search down from a 900-kilometre stretch of highway to a pinpoint on a map.
In the investigation of a cold case, there is nobody that is more dedicated than family members, the Mark Joneses of the world, who keep their loved one's name alive and who force law enforcement to continue to answer some difficult questions.
After 43 years of despair and unresolved grief, Mark Jones could be closer to solving the mystery of what happened to his brother Tony on the murder highway.
For a good part of my life, it was the expectation that we were just never going to know. But when there's leads and growing numbers of witnesses, strong suspects, still living, well, how do you walk away from that?